Well, first of all, Jay, you are incredibly successful. I've got to fix my hair here. And I'm just wondering, I want to know about you. I want to know about your radio background. And right now you're totally crushing it in all digital, etc. But what are the amazing things that you're doing now?
Right now, I'm covering the Chicago Blackhawks full time with CHGO Sports. We launched in March of 2022 as a startup, and I've been there ever since. Actually, left a job at WBBM where I met you to take that
Yeah.
job, which is beyond a dream job. It's something I never really even knew existed, but I love it. Blackhawks have always been kind of a passion of mine. I've loved kind of covering them unofficially. So now that I get to do it officially, it's a dream come true. And, my days at work are going to practice, going to games, and reacting immediately after games and after practices. And it's been awesome. And it's kind of a long time coming, but I think a lot of people in media have that story of they've got this end game they want and they have to work a long time to get there. And I did. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So what was your end game when you started?
It's funny. The dream job in my mind was that I wanted to host the Blackhawks pre and post game shows on the radio. And when you look at what that is now in terms of a career, it's part time. I think it's actually like you're paid per shift. There's no benefits. You're just kind of brought in, you do your thing, they pay you for the show, and they say thank you. When I was getting started in the early 2000s, most of those people had other full-time jobs at the stations that they worked at, and they would also do that as part of their gig. But as the media landscape has changed, and I think that media companies have gotten better at weighing, um, I guess you would say the value of roles. I think I came up in an era where there were AM talk show hosts making $1 million a year plus. And while that's great, I want people to make their money, of course. I think once the research came back and the media diaries changed, we learned that hosts probably didn't have as big of an impact on the coverage as they had thought. So a lot of those things kind of fell back to earth on the talent side in terms of financials. So, and also in the way that stations treat those roles too. I just don't feel they think they're as important anymore. So I'd actually sort of abandoned that thought to be a pre and post game host because it just wasn't sustainable. And if it became part of a bigger role that I had somewhere, so be it. But I started moving towards after 23 years at 670 The Score as a producer and occasional host that got to cover the Hawks when they were only good, really, because they didn't pay any attention to it otherwise. Um, Started to shift into the management side, and that's when I went to WBBM, and then just when you least expect it, something arises that catches you off guard, and that's exactly what happened here.
Yeah, and I remember when I met you at BB, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this guy. Don't worry, not romantically, but I just thought you were. No,
Thank
sometimes
you.
when I say to somebody, I love so and so, they're like, really? I'm like, no, no. I mean, I love them, like I appreciate them, but I'm using hyperbole. But yeah, I remember you just seem like so different than a lot of people I'd met in media, and I'm just wondering, like, what the heck did you do at the Score for so many years?
I want to ask you first, like, how was I different?
Oh gosh, I know that's a whole other thing. You got to interview me on your podcast. No,
All right, I guess so.
no, you just seem, no, you just seem like very down to earth, committed, like extreme passion for radio. But you didn't strike me as somebody who'd like throw somebody under the bus, and you were just like very easy to talk to. And I felt like well, first of all, you're way more successful than I was, but you didn't judge me on that. And I was sort of on the like, I still felt like I was sort of on the sidelines, and you are very attentive and uh knowledgeable but not arrogant, and also you survived, like, I mean, working in sports radio is like every guy's dream. I mean, if I meet someone, usually it's a guy, if I meet a guy who wants to go into radio, they want to go into sports radio. And even some guys I train on the board at BBM to run the to be on the air for the Bears, they were extremely passionate because they thought, okay, if I can get on a producer job for the Score, I can probably get on the air, because it tends to be a trend. And I think you reached that dream, yet it didn't seem to make you arrogant or paranoid about your position or whatever.
I appreciate that. I don't know. I was very content. I know that people in media, I mean, look, people in every, I don't want to just, speak ill of media because I think it's every
I
industry
love
has
media.
people that are just, they just want to climb, 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 and the bottom line is what matters. And I've never really been driven by financial success, and maybe that's a sign of the fact that as a kid, I didn't really have to worry about it. Like my parents did well. Like I never had to worry about bill pay or food or like, so it never was an obsession of mine. Um, I've always said like all I want to do is have a family and a house and live comfortably and just be able to pay my bills and take an occasional vacation and and I had kind of reached that. So I was pretty content with it. And looking back on it, if I had been a little more ambitious, could I probably have been a little further along in my career? Definitely. But I think like you said, when you're working at a job that you recognize that other people would really, you know, give a lot up just to have the opportunity to have, I appreciated that. And were there some days that were annoying? Yes. Did I wish I made more money at the time, especially early on? Like absolutely. But I think I knew by being myself, by treating people well, and working hard and setting an example that eventually someone would notice and hire me is what I wanted to do, and it paid off. I mean, to work at a single place for 23 years in media is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen really ever. And I do think in some ways the score is unique in that way. There's a few guys that have been there since the first day, 30 plus years ago. Fewer than there used to be, but it's always been a place where people would just stay because it was a good environment for the most part. It's a fun place to work. You like the people you're working with. And could I have made 20,000 more dollars somewhere? Yeah, maybe. But would I have been happy? I don't know. So I was just very content. And I think if I was coming off as that way, that's good. It's kind of how I'm aiming to be. You know, I have worked with egos before, and I think it is maybe the least flattering character trait someone can have is to be like a don't you know who I am or don't look at me or don't talk to me. I just think that is it comes from a place of deep insecurity. Um, so I don't know. It's always bothered me. So I think I've made it, especially as I've grown my name a little bit and moved on to the talent side. I've been extremely vigilant about that. Of don't change who you are, don't change how you treat people. And I think, people will come up to say hi to me or to say hi to me and my partners at the Hawks games. And I do my best to just give them the full attention because all they want to do is tell me they like me, you know?
Yeah.
And I think everyone's had that experience as a kid or adult where they've met someone famous that hasn't treated them well and it sticks with them forever. So if I can take 5 minutes to be kind to somebody, whether I'm an on-air talent or whether I'm, you know, I don't know, a behind the scenes tax assistant. I don't know. I'm just picking a random career. I just feel like that should be everyone's North Star. Is just treat people with dignity and kindness, and it shouldn't really have be something you have to think about, right? I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you seem content because well, you did say that you weren't going for super riches or whatever, but you acknowledged the fact that you had achieved what you want and that was fine, and then you just let it go in your mind. Like what I mean is you were sailing with it because some people even I'm not saying all people are like this, but some people who have had any kind of success, they're always looking behind or they think that some people think that any kind of question is hostile and they don't want to give you an inch. Believe me, I've experienced this with a lot of different kinds of
Yeah.
people in different situations, not just radio. So,
Well, I think I do. It's somewhat different for me because there's just not a huge group of people that are fighting and clawing to cover the Blackhawks. Like that's just reality. They're just not, most people that work in sports media in Chicago are ultimately trying to cover the Bears or the Cubs or the Sox, right? Those are like the big three. And if they do have a job covering the Hawks, they probably want that on the way to something else. where that was sort of my end game was the Hawks. It's what I wanted. So I don't, and that might be a little bit why I haven't experienced it quite as much. In terms of my days at the Score as a producer, it just, I don't know, it just never felt that cutthroat to me. And maybe it's just me being naive. Maybe I'm just kind of blind to it and I try to, think of people as mostly good, which is harder than ever now. But um, I don't know. I had just not personally experienced, save for a couple people, trying to like just climb, 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 climb. And I think one good thing about the Score when I was there is they could identify people like that, and they just like weren't welcome because
Wow.
it was kind of a buzzkill, right? And you knew when those people came in and they showed that ambition or asking to get on the air and they're asking for promotions and they're, undermining things. It's like, okay, this is not what we do here. This is not how we act at this place. And I talk about the Score as if it's like this utopia, and it's certainly not. But I do think they're, at least in like the producer element of things, um, we just sort of self-policed that sort of stuff.
Well, then that's different than previous cultures. Like I never worked at the Score, but I literally worked next door to the Score because BBM it was and still is next door to the Score. But at one point, I was working in a studio, the production studio, and I was next to the doors of the Score. And other people told me a similar thing. They're like, "Oh, it's really great." But years before, I talked to certain people, and it wasn't that kind of culture. It was actually, well, anyway, I've talked to different people from the Score, so I think it went through changes throughout the years.
Well, I'll say this. Everyone's opinion of the place is going to change based on what their ultimate, right. So if someone there was ultra ambitious and they didn't get where they wanted to go, they're probably not going to have a positive feeling, right? Or if for whatever reason, whatever opportunity they envisioned didn't go their way, or they feel they're misunderstood or whatever it might be, they're going to have a negative feel about that place. I mean, I worked at Walgreens for one day. I hated it. Like it was like the worst 8 hours of my life. It was awful. And I said, I'm not going back. Like, thank you for the opportunity, but I just knew right away it wasn't a fit. So it's everybody's different. But to me, it just felt like home. And I don't know. Everyone's gonna have a different thought. Like you and I will have different feelings about WBBM. You've been there a long time. I was there for a short time. Mine are positive, but you because of how long you've been there, how the sausage is made, for lack of a better word. And um, it's hard to. I'm sure there were many people at the Score that did not have fully positive experiences. And to say mine was fully positive isn't true either. But more often than not, way more good days than bad.
Oh yeah, and I left BBM in 2022, but I had actually a great experience and I learned a lot. I was there for um, I was there for 8 years,
Yeah.
and I left for certain reasons, but um, and I don't even work in radio anymore, but yeah, I had a really good. You say it's interesting. You say how the sausage is made, and actually, I used to confirm to people that they are BBM is dedicated to being impartial, and the Ron Gleason took that seriously. So I don't have any bad feelings about BBM at all, and there are a lot of very committed people, and I overall had a great experience. I learned a ton, so I just love radio. So if I could, I would work in it again. I mean, not if I could.
Yeah.
I'm sure I
Oh,
can, but yeah,
yeah. If the opportunity comes again, you would. And I would,
yeah.
if God forbid something happens at THGO and the company folds or whatever, or they lay me off or whatever it might be, I think the first phone call I make is going to be right back to Odyssey Chicago to see what's available. Would I miss what I'm doing? Of course, but you know, I I I love it too, and I don't know. I wish that people would. I just have this fear that it's fading away a little bit. And I mean, it is. We know it is, because you have every song ever written in your pocket. So you can customize every song you hear on your ride to work if you'd like, and listen to whatever curated conversation you want, which is great for me because I'm a podcaster, right? So people on Hawks can get it whenever they want, which is great. Um, but I just think there's something cool about and something magical about radio that I think is lost on people a little bit because I just remember as like in grade school, if there was a song I wanted to hear, I'd have to listen to the radio, and then once I heard those first few notes, hit the record on the tape deck, and that was kind of the only way to do it. Um, I think there was just something very magical about that, and I do think live and local is going to stick around, you know. So I think sports radio is healthy. I think news radio is healthy, but when you look at music radio, it's kind of hard to see a sustainable path for them without kind of a major reinvention kind of a thing. And I don't know what that is.
Well, when you were in radio, for so many years, broadcast radio, did you imagine doing digital?
Um, so I started actually, I was a pretty, I wouldn't say early adopter, but I guess, yeah, I guess I'd be an early adopter podcaster. Like I started my podcast in 2017.
That's not
So,
early adopter, but okay. I'm sorry to cut
right.
you down,
No,
but
you're right.
no,
But I
early
mean, like,
adopter is John Suntress, 2005.
right. So that's like ground floor,
Yes, yes, ground floor, yeah.
doing it. And I think when it started to become doable for, I think around, the mid 2010s,
Yeah.
that's when it became doable for people that didn't know how to do it, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Um, so in my mind, it was pretty early. I know like John is a groundbreaker. There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
But in terms of like podcast being mainstream, I think I joined pretty early in that timeline,
Oh,
I guess
that's
you'd
good.
say.
Yes, that's a good point. Being
Yeah,
mainstream because the technology made it easier,
right.
etc.
Right. And I was so focused on radio, I didn't even really have time to consume anything else like that because working at the score, you got to know the result of every game, the big story of every team. So it's not like with the Hawks now, I can just focus on one team and kind of casually keep an eye on the others. Back at the score, it was every team. So I have no time to consume any other media. It was basically if I wasn't at the score, I was listening to the score or watching sports or whatever it might be. So I was probably a little bit late in picking up on some of that stuff. But anyway, long story short, I did know that that was the next step in terms of media was digital, and I think that that was something that a lot of companies struggled with because, and it's logical. I mean, the decision makers at the time when podcasting and digital was really taking off were men in their 50s and 60s, and it was totally new to them, and they didn't really know what to do with it. And now that, my generation has started to take over as program directors and things like that, they're a little more up to par on digital. But I'm 48 and I work in an all digital media company, and I find myself talking to, I have a producer who's 24 years old. She just moved here from Denver, and I'm constantly asking her about like what's the newest technology? What's the best way to maximize eyes on this video we made or eyes on this VOD or whatever it might be? Because I know how to do it and I know what people want, but I also, okay, now that it's made and now that it's created, how do we go about maximizing its impact? And that's something that I need to learn. And I think managers in general are wise to listen to the younger people that work for them
Yeah.
and trust them to make those decisions appropriately because, I think like you were saying, maybe you get a little bit standoffish because you think someone's coming for your job or you feel like you're going to get aged out or whatever it might be. But I think if you're adaptable and you listen to young people, they're going to steer you in the right direction most of the time. And I also think, with that said, I've also noticed a trend that, um, like I think you may have seen this week, like Frank Thomas got mad at the White Sox for not including him in a Black History Month post, and the Blackhawks this year are celebrating their centennial season, so they're posting all these graphics and facts and everything, and a lot of the stuff on there is wrong.
Oh my
Like it's just bad
gosh.
information. So I don't know if that's people using AI to find their historical stats. Like there's 4 or 5 examples of this, like with scoreboard images and social media posts and stuff like that. So I do
So
think
nobody's doing
too.
the fact checking or
Well,
editing.
yes, and I think that this is where you need your older, like me, your middle-aged generation to also have an eye on the things the younger people are doing because it's just a blind spot, right? Like I worked in sports radio from the 2000 from 2001. Well, actually 99. I started as an intern till now. I'm working in sports media. But do I have a complete blind spot when it comes to athletes from the 60s and 70s? Yeah, sure. I know the big names, but so if you're looking back on the 2010s Blackhawks, the social media managers now for a team like that, they were 8 or 9 years old back then. So they need someone who is there to check them and fill them in on the history. Like I know it feels like yesterday to people our age, but to them, that's when they were kids. And it's they just don't have the depth of knowledge on it. So I think that skewing younger is a good move when it comes to social media, but I do think there still needs to be those checks and balances of, hey, you were around in the 90s. You old man, tell us what it was like. Like, pull up a chair and tell us about the 90s. I just think you have to kind of have everyone collaborating together to make the best product. It shouldn't be like only young people can do social media and only old people can be management. Good ideas are good ideas. Smart people are smart people. And, I just think that as you were alluding to, don't be afraid of being challenged. I just think it ultimately improves the product and improves everybody's situation. You would think, right?
Well, what kind of advice did she give you,
Um,
your producer?
yeah, just like not, I mean, because it kind of like varies video to video and media piece to media piece, but just kind of a better understanding of SEO, words to use, things to highlight, kind of what does well and what doesn't. We're constantly trying to figure out YouTube's algorithms, which are always changing and they're really finicky. One challenge we've had at CHGO is that we are on one channel. So the Bears and the Bulls and the Cubs and the Hawks and the Sox are all on one channel. So it doesn't really know what to make of our channel.
Hmm.
Like, is it football? Is it hockey? Like, so it doesn't, YouTube sort of struggles with knowing how to push us. And we did experiment with a Cubs only channel, like a separate YouTube account for the Cubs channel. And it just hasn't, it's been okay. It hasn't soared like we thought it might when it was just like telling YouTube, okay, this is Chicago Cubs only, push this to Cubs people. It's been fine, but it hasn't been as different as it's been for the whole channel. So we're just always trying to navigate that. And I think they just have a tendency to keep up on those things more. But like when I started there, I didn't really know, even as a guy who's been podcasting for almost 10 years, I don't know what SEO is. I just write the headline is what the topic was.
Hmm.
And because I come from like a journalism background. So if I'm writing a headline, I want to make sure that people know what the story is about, not so much about getting the attention of a search engine. And that's a sort of a shifting mindset. And then I think the challenge too for my producers has been, okay, yeah, I understand where you're coming from with SEO, but it also can't be clickbait. Like we're not trying to clickbait people. Like you won't believe what this guy said, and it's like a big nothing burger, because that's how you lose. That's how your audience loses faith in you.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing to remind people of too. That hey, like if you're working in a place that is trying to have journalistic integrity, you have to treat everything that way. And yeah, maybe you can sensationalize this headline to get more SEO, but what is the like if it gets 100 more views or whatever, 200 more views, is that worth the potential damage you're doing in creating the illusion that we might be a clickbaity kind of a place? And that's always been, and I think going back to the score, I think that that's always one of the criticisms that a lot of the shows get is like, well, you guys always agree on everything. It's like, well, sure, but I don't think you want manufactured disagreement. You can get that. ESPN has it 24/7, right? If you want manufactured opinions, they're very easy to find. I just don't think that that is not genuine. And I think that people who are, I think Chicago people specifically can see through that very easily. So I think that's always been a thing for me is sure, we can try to maximize this as best we can, but I'm also not going to put something out there that is misleading or baiting. Um, so that's kind of the balance too, because I do think that clickbait is what these search engines prioritize now.
Yeah. Well, it's not just search engines, it's also the algorithms of TikTok, et
Right.
cetera, shorts, you know.
Yep.
I was going to say something before I asked you about authenticity, but you were talking about SEO, and I'm thinking about Brent Payne, who it makes a very good living from SEO. And I interviewed him back in 2010 when he was at the Tribune and I was at WGN Radio, but it was all like one big thing.
Hmm.
And he'd been doing SEO like forever, like since the beginning of the whole thing. I think since the 90s or early 2000s. And his specialty is SEO. So I interviewed him in 2010, and then I did a follow up with him in 2020, and he's still crushing it. So SEO has been around a long time. It's just what's changed is that you have to pop those algorithms for so it'll go into the feed. But
Right.
there's always going to be some kind of trend, you know.
Yeah. And that's the keeping up with it and then keeping up with because these algorithms are constantly adjusting now
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Um, because I think, the
Like a
early
moving
days of,
target.
yeah, right. Like in the early days of Google, the early days of Yahoo and what Netscape Navigator, like all these like very original web browsers were, I think a lot of that algorithm was human made, right? Like you'd have a bunch of people working at Google trying to curate things on their own. And then as the technology grew and it became AI based, right? Or it just would sort of self correct, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's just always changing. So you're just chasing your tail all the time with it.
Yeah. And also in the early days, I think it was based more in academia because, for instance, in academic journals, I'm just thinking about because I used to work for one digitally and it was also in print, but then it stopped being print. But anyway, if you get cited by more people, your rank goes up. So I think originally they were sort of following that concept that if people get links, they get hits. And then there was a change in the 2010s and I think yeah, you're right. With as the technology changed, it all changed. But it's sorry, as the technology changed, the algorithms changed and the expectations changed. But I think what's important about you though is that you're you've been in broadcast media, so you learn those concepts. And then of course now you're very successful in digital. And one thing you did mention was, manufacturing conflict and so forth. But how do you maintain the authenticity throughout all those mediums or media?
I just tell you what I think. I mean, it's to me, it's very simple. And I think you also, I don't know, if I just watched a Hawks game, I've been watching, I think since 1996, I've maybe missed six Blackhawks games, like just not seen them. So that's, 30 years of not missing a game. So I think I have a general idea of what I'm talking about. So when a game ends and I come on, I just sort of tell you what I saw. And I don't really think about how am I going to frame this or how am I going to, you know, how am I going to try to make this look better or worse to support my narrative? I think, like last night we had we have a live chat and one of the Blackhawks players had 2 goals and 2 assists and had a great game. And like, were you going to rip on him tonight? It's like, no, he had a good game tonight. Right? You know what I mean? It's like our job is to react to what we're seeing. And if 19 of 20 games were subpar, we're going to say so, but we're not going to pretend that the good one wasn't good. That's it. I just think that it's not a difficult concept. Like being authentic, it's just saying what you truly believe. Because as you get in these, I see some of these manufactured disagreement guys forgetting what they said,
Mhm.
2 months ago because it was manufactured. And now everyone remembers everything. Everyone's got a video of everything. So, hey, remember 2 months ago you said this exact thing that contradicts what you're saying? And then your authenticity is challenged and your credibility is challenged. And that's once you lose credibility, you're kind of toast in this industry, I think.
But
There's not a lot of ways to recover from that. So it's never been a challenge for me. I've always just said, okay, I just watched this game or I just heard this press conference or went to this practice and this is what I saw. I don't know any other way to do it.
well, I was asking you, but can their change in opinions just come organically? Like maybe they said something a couple months ago, now they're contradicting themselves because they've changed, or they're just really just manufacturing.
No, absolutely. I look, this is beyond media. This is beyond sports. Like I think we all every day are reevaluating how we see things, right? And if new information has come to light to change your opinion on something or someone, then yes, of course. Like I think digging in is almost as unhealthy as faking your opinion. Because if you're just digging in saying, no, I can't be wrong, or I refuse to be wrong on this topic, and as much evidence as you point in my way that I am wrong, I'm just gonna, stomp my feet and cross my arms and pout that you're lying or it's fake or whatever it might be. That's not authentic either. And like if we're talking strictly about the world of sports, do players get better? Yeah. Do players get worse as they age? Yes. So the value someone had last year can be significantly different this year, or last month to this month, or pre-injury, post-injury. It's always changing. Always. And like, just if you talk about non-sports figures that were adored. And then I always think about Bill Cosby. Like when I was growing up, I loved the Cosby Show. I had all of Bill Cosby's comedy stand-up records and cassettes. I could recite them. I went and saw him in concert, and then all those allegations came out, and I was like, all right, well, that's over. Like it new stuff comes to light, and you've got to change, you know, you got to change when the information changes. And I think as long as it's honest and say, hey, look, I was wrong, man. I was critical of this guy for the first month, and he was not playing great, but man, he's made these adjustments over the last few weeks, and you can really see a difference. And all of a sudden, he's really playing well. Like that's honest analysis. I just think anything short of that is fake, and I don't know. I don't know what the desire for that would be.
Well, I mean, but it's interesting that you say, okay, I believe in authenticity. And you are obviously authentic and it's totally paid off literally and you're living the dream. But there are a lot of people who aren't authentic who are totally doing well. So what's up with that?
Well, I think there's an audience for it because there's rage bait. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you see people say things on social media or say things on ESPN or whatever that they know is going to get a reaction. And then that reaction, good or bad, generates a million impressions. So that person can say, look what I did. Look at all this. Look at all these impressions I generated for you. People can't tune out. I mean, a great example before even the digital age is Howard Stern, as people would that hated him listened even longer. So fine, he was comfortable being an agitator. That's just not how I'm not arguing that it can work, but all the really nice things you said about me when the show began, that's what's more important to me than
Mm.
I don't know. I don't care if I have a video go viral. I actually don't want it to because I don't like the attention. I don't like arguing with people on Twitter. I have really dialed back on that because it's just kind of screaming into the void and no minds have ever been changed on Twitter ever. Um, so I'm just trying to control my space and control my peace. And if I say what I think and you disagree, cool, let's do it respectfully and talk about it. But if you're going to call me an idiot and, insult my appearance or whatever it might be, like, all right, well, I don't really have time for that anymore. I used to have a lot of time for it, and it wasn't good for me, and it wasn't good for my family, and it wasn't good for my mental health. And, so I dialed that back, and I'm much happier for it. Yes, if I went on the air after every Hawks loss and, flipped over a table and screamed and said everybody should be fired, like, sure, that might go viral, but it's not authentic. It's just
It
not.
has no substance.
No, it has no substance. And, we deal with people that are like this all the time. Like, trade this guy. Yeah, he had a terrible game or fire the GM. It's like, no, you got to look at things contextually. And it's kind of a lost art. And I kind of take pride in, at least I hope that I present my opinions with context and, you know, long views and kind of like the zoom out picture of things because I think sports radio has changed a lot in that way, and sports media has changed a lot in that way. Where like the early days of the score, as you mentioned, like when Mike North was on, and he was one of the best to ever do it, and I worked for him for a long time, and he was very good to me. But
Yeah.
Mike would come on and blast somebody after a bad game, and that was it. Like it was just, and then I think when Dan Bernstein and Terry Boers started, there was a lot more of like nuance to it. of, okay, well, this guy, over the last 5 games is doing this and this, and here's maybe why. And if you look at this, and that, I just think there's a little more depth and context to things now, which I appreciate because I think that truly makes a smarter sports fan. And I think the Chicago sports fan is smarter now than it's ever been.
Yeah. Well,
And
because they have
not,
so much information.
it is, yes, a lot. That's what I was going to say. A lot of it is that information's available at their fingertips. And I think, honestly, same for sports broadcasters because when I was starting at the Score, we had to pull out like the baseball almanac to find stats. Like, okay, what did this guy do? It's like it was like a phone book of every baseball stat ever. And you go, okay, in 1987, he did that. Okay, yeah, yeah. And you'd have to literally go through with like a highlighter and find what you're looking for. Now it's 3 seconds, you type in the name and everything they've ever done is right there. So it's made it easier to be educated. And I think it's benefited both the broadcaster and the fan.
Well, you were talking about, understanding the context. I know you've only missed 6 games, like you said, but do you also do additional research?
Oh yeah, I'm constantly, looking around the league, how they're doing. There are a lot of, I think the advanced statistics in hockey have a long way to go, but they've gotten a lot better. Hockey is hard to do because I always say it's like a pinball game. There's so many variables in a sequence of play that like baseball is a series of like 1 versus 1 matchups, pitcher versus hitter, and there's a definite result that you can either give credit to the pitcher or the hitter, and that's it, right? And there's some fielder stuff too, but like it's here's this play. What are the analytics on this? Boom, next play, next play, next play. In hockey, the puck is just bouncing wildly. There's so many variables. It's really hard to kind of quantify um, who's good and who's not, aside from who just puts the puck in the net the most. But they've done a good job over the last probably 20 years or so of trying to measure possession, like who has it, who is trying to shoot more often, right? And that's become kind of the main focus. But yeah, I'm always looking at, over the last month, like where did the Blackhawks stand in comparison to the rest of the league? Like, can we glean anything from the deeper numbers? Like they had a really good start to the year. But if you looked in deeply, it was like this is probably not sustainable because they've got a really high, shooting percentage higher than normal. And their goalie's also playing like the best in the world, and that's not going to stay the whole season. So you kind of have to take that information and use it to inform, like, hey, really good start here, but how can they keep it going this way? They probably can't. Here's why. But again, if if it sustains itself for a month or two, then you start having conversations of, okay, maybe that's what this really is.
But what I noticed in football is, which I'm sure is similar to hockey and other group sports like soccer, is they analyze the other team in terms of how they're building their structure of the game, and then they'll look at patterns of the other team and they'll adjust accordingly. So it's not just like, oh, this guy's really strong, this guy's really strong. It's like, how are we going to strategize to beat the other team? So I'm sure it goes on in hockey.
It does, but because of the randomness of it,
Okay.
it's a little bit harder to predict. I mean, because because you have guys literally coming on and off the ice while the puck's in play, and you can't. If you're the road team, you don't get to pick who you're matched up against. The home team gets that last pick. So it's just it. Mostly when you talk to hockey coaches, they'll tell you like we know what they do well, and we're not going to try to play into that. But at the same time, they have to know where the best players are at all times. They try to get that matchup they can as often as they can. But in terms of like changing their system game to game, they don't really do that. Most hockey teams play a system and they stick to it. And then the adjustments are made in terms of who is covering this guy or these guys tonight, who has this
Wow.
assignment. Because you just can't, there's no point in like planning. Like I'll say this, like if it's the end of the game, you're down by one, there's 15 seconds left, they'll drop a play. Like we're gonna try to make this happen. But that's again, a million things have to go right. They have to win the face off. They have to win it precisely to where they want to win it. If a guy falls down on the other team and he's in the way of a passing lane, like there's only so much you can plan for in such a random game. So more than any sport, hockey teams just stick to their system and they try to dictate matchups. Whereas I think like the Bears, like Ben Johnson would say, this week we're playing the Packers. This is the approach we're going to have against them. These are the plays I've designed to beat the Packers. Um, so because you can, pick on individuals a little easier because when you line up, it's one guy and one guy and one guy, or it's a guy's responsible for an area, and you can find those little soft spots and see where they're going to be. And in hockey, it's impossible to do.
So it sounds exciting because it's live and spontaneous. So each day can be different.
Yeah, I mean, yes, definitely, and I think that's what I like about it is every game has a different feel and a different pace, and um, in the good teams, like when the Blackhawks were winning Stanley Cups, they were dictating that. Like they would dictate the pace, they would dictate what the other team was doing because they were just so in control all the time. Um, and when you see a team like that, it's really kind of breathtaking because you realize how difficult it is to do that on a regular basis. And when you see a team do it well, it's very, very cool to see. It's frustrating if it's not your team because it's really difficult to defend. But yeah, that's one of the things I like about hockey is the unpredictability.
Now, I just want to get back to the being authentic because I think what you're saying is very countercultural. Because until now, I was thinking, do people have to construct an identity and then create their brand and then go with that in their pursuits? And you're very successful, obviously, with your numbers. Otherwise, they wouldn't keep you. So, what do you think is the deal with like, can people
I mean,
achieve or, yeah,
so I didn't like, I can't say I like set out to build a brand,
yeah.
but when I was given an opportunity, I did what I thought I needed to do to keep the opportunity. Right. And the guidance I've always seen and the people that I've always looked up to in sports media or otherwise has been that authenticity. Right. And um, so if I'm trying to build a capital B brand, it would just be that I want to be the guy that people know they can come to for honest analysis.
Now,
I
what
don't know if
about
that
your,
I don't know if that's a brand. I just think I guess the brand is me,
ooh,
right?
the brand is me, yeah.
I
Now,
can't, I
what
don't
about
know.
your I'm Fat Pod? That's a totally different
Yeah, but it's
direction.
the same. It's the same thing. Like when me and my partner Rick do the MFAT podcast, we're just talking about our struggles as big guys, right? Like, man, I'm trying to find a pair of socks that doesn't, dent my ankles or shoes that are wide enough, or I keep ripping through belts. Like, what is the deal with this? And it's funny and it's relatable. And I think the fact that Rick and I are so just like we don't care. Like, yeah, we go through stuff that everybody goes through, and we're gonna talk about it and laugh about it. I think it just takes the stigma off of it a little bit, and it makes us feel better to feel like seen by people. Like, man, I heard you guys talking about this, and that's so true. It happens to me all the time. Or, we just give a restaurant review or whatever it might be. Like I use the same exact approach on the I'm Fat podcast that I do covering the Hawks, which is just I'm kind of an open book. Maybe I'm an oversharer. But I think people appreciate that they know that if they tune in to the I'm Fat podcast, I'm not going to be like, oh, I can't, it's too embarrassing. I'm not going to talk about it. Like, no, I'm going to talk about it. It's funny. Right. Like, I don't know. That's just, I don't know. I don't think it's hard to talk about, Margaret, because it's just not something that I'm very conscious of. I'm just I'm just very like, and sometimes I've been like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe that was a little too far, right? Like maybe that was a bit of an overshare, but I don't feel like it's ever come back to really haunt me personally. I said something about a friend once that I just shooting from the hip said it in the wrong way and it upset them. And I was like, I see why you're upset. I meant it as this. I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to re-litigate the whole thing. But what I meant to say was this, and what I said was this, and I could see how you could perceive that as something else. So I'm sorry. I did not mean it that way, and I will clarify next time. But that's just misspeaking on live radio, and just not, you don't know a topic's coming up and you haven't curated your words precisely. So sometimes something like that'll happen. But I don't know. I just put very little thought in I'm very much of the school of we just watch a hockey game. We just watch the same game. Let's put on the headphones and do it. We don't need to sit here and plan every segment and everything we're going to talk about. We know what the big stories are. We're going to get to them. We're going to do it well. We're going to do it honestly, and we're going to do it again tomorrow. I don't. I just don't think
And I
it's that
know that you
complicated.
have, yeah, I know that this is the shortest live stream I have done with anybody. I know you have to leave in a few minutes to go to your successful job in life, but back to the I'm Fat podcast. How did you have time and energy to do that after all your Blackhawks extravaganza?
So that actually started at the Score. My partner Rick and I were producers of the midday show, and whenever we would talk about that stuff, they would sort of joke and be like, "Okay, yeah, save that for the podcast," which didn't exist. So one day we just did it as kind of a gag. Like, let's just do one and it'll be funny and it'll be something we could play on the show. Um, and then people really liked it. So we just kept doing it. And then when I left the Score, and Rick got laid off, actually, Mitch Rosen was like, "Yeah, it's your intellectual property. We just were hosting it. So you're free to take it and do what you want with it." And we've actually switched to every other week just because Rick recently got married and just life has been busy. It's been hard to do it weekly. Um, but it's an hour a week, you know. I we do an hour recording and I spend an hour getting it prepped and edited and posted and everything, and spending the week just taking pictures of our food and writing down little things that happen to us. And yeah, again, I think that's just what people like about it is it's just unfiltered and it's honest and it's fun. And I think more than ever, people are just looking for something to laugh at, and we're giving it to them.
And so, in the last few minutes, do you have any advice for people who want to live the dream? Because you're living
Um,
it, man. I
are
mean,
we
you're
talking?
not living my dream.
Are we talking
Well,
specifically in media? Because I think it changes things. If we're talking specifically about media, I would just set the expectation of it as a long road. If your end game is to be on the air, unless you are generationally talented, and there are people like that are just so good they can't be denied. Um, it's a long road, and there's a lot of long days, and there's a lot of holidays worked, and there's a lot of events missed, and weekends worked, and um, I for the last 4 years at CHGO, and the last probably 10 years at the Score when I was an executive producer. It took me 13 to get there. So it took time of just really bottom of the barrel fill in shifts. So if you want a job in media that's on air, it's a grind. There's only 24 hours in a day. There's only so many show segments or show slots in a 24-hour day. So, you're looking at per city, maybe 10 on air spots if we're talking about sports radio. Um, so it's hard. And you might have to be willing to move, might have to be willing to relocate, but um, if you're talented and you work at it and you're genuine, you'll probably get your opportunity at some point. And then it's a matter of when you get it, making the most of it. Because there have been a lot of people that worked for the opportunity and got it and then fumbled it. So,
what about digital? Because you got the call, right?
well, I think I got the call because they were looking for someone to lead Blackhawks, and they were not hiring me for my digital expertise. They were hiring me for my hockey opinions and my hockey following.
How did they find you?
Because of the Blackhawks podcast I do now was my own that I started in 2017 before CHGO opened. So I was the owner and host of the Madhouse podcast. So they bought my feed from me and then hired me to do it full time. So I'd been doing the Hawks podcast since 2017, and I had all my time on the Score there. So the people that were building CHGO were working with the folks in Denver who ran the company were working with people that they had hired locally to scout talent. And I had established myself as one of the better names in Hawksland. So I was not to be, I guess I'm being arrogant, but a pretty obvious call if you're looking for someone to do Hawks in Chicago that was looking for an opportunity, right, to do it full time. I check every one of those boxes. So yeah, I don't think they weren't going on Indeed or anything looking for me.